Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? It's only halfway through the January window, and there's almost nothing to show for it just yet. We're here for the Celts Are Here flagship podcast. I'm Quinny, and as ever, I'm joined by Josh. Josh, my man, hail, hail, good to see you.
Good to be back in the podcast. Obviously standing in for you last week, but good to see you back in well, Quinny, for this one.
Cheers, mate. It's been a funny start to the year, and back on the pod again, ever-present fixture we've got here nowadays is Michael, whatever we're going to say. Michael, hail, hail, good to see you, mate.
Michael. Good day, everybody, except it's good evening because it's 10 p.m. But yeah, it's incredibly hot in Australia. It's a good time for a winter break.
It definitely would be. And this winter break, it definitely feels that, like, I think maybe the first week, it just kind of evaporated, and then everyone's just kind of coming to all of a sudden. And we're like, hold on a minute, it's the 10th of January. Where are the signings? Rangers have already went out and signed somebody. They're already getting their dead wood off their books. They're getting rumoured to more players. What are Celtic up to? We've got all this money in the bank. We've got all these aspirations. We need to win the league. We need to get back into the Champions League next year. And it feels like the club are sitting on their hands at the moment. But guys, as we come in to the podcast today, we do have little bits and pieces to pick up. There might be some activity. There might be some movement in the January transfer window. The number one thing that's probably on the tip of every Celtic fan's tongue at the moment is wanting to know more about Nicolas Kuhn, the attacking winger that we've been linked with Rapid Vienna. These reports have been coming out over the last 2 or 3 days at point of recording. And as we're talking to you now, it feels like there's a bit of motion in the ocean, and we're going to get this one done. Michael, Josh, I don't know who to start with, but if, thoughts and feelings, first impressions, what do we think of Nicolas Kuhn?
He looks like a quality winger, going by what I've seen of him. Obviously, I think Michael knows more than me. He's got a bit of inside information on the player, but going by his profile, his goals and assists over the past season, he looks quite good. I watched about 5-10 minutes of him last night. Now, anyone can look good in the video, as we know. However, what the videos do give you is a sign of the style of player they can be. From what I've seen, he looks quite quick. He's got a really good left foot on him, can play adeptly on either wing, and can contribute to goals and assists, putting good crosses across the box, and has a good finish on him. 2 goals, 5 assists this season for Rapid Vienna. And when you have a player who's been at the academies of Ajax and Bayern Munich, they're going to have quality. So my verdict is that it could be a good signing. Only £3 million and thereabouts. The transfer fee, at least for Celtic in recent times, can never really give you an indication of how good the player's going to be. You look at Vasilis Barkas, you signed him for £4.5 million, he was a dud. And then you look at Luis Palma, who we signed for £1.5 million in the summer, and he's arguably been our best player this season. So my verdict is, he looks like he could be a good signing for us, but we'll just have to wait and see till he comes through the door.
Yeah, I can't claim I've got any great sort of insight other than that I text my mate who's a Rapid Vienna fan last week, and he described him as, I'll find the message, pretty good and has lots of room to develop into a solid player. But I also love Bolingoli when he played for Rapid. That's what he said, and look how well that ended up. Yeah, I watched this. I guess we've all seen the same YouTube videos, right? And my takeaway was that Rapid should take the money and spend it on a striker, because the number of balls that he was putting across the Rapid striker just missed. I thought if Kyogo was getting them, he'd score them. So that's just, I'd love to see what his expected assists are up against his assists, because the assist numbers were, five's all right for half a season, but yeah, the assist requires the other person to finish it, which wasn't always the case. But yeah, I mean, there was an interesting graph that came out that showed him sort of very similar in profile to Angel Di Maria, which I thought was interesting. In terms of especially off the ball stuff, like Di Maria's brilliant at that. And he does seem like more of a different profile to Abada, who's very much try and score. Maida, who's the pressing machine. He seemed more like almost a Palmer-esque player, like more of a playmaker who plays on the side. Lots of dribbling, pretty fast, lots of good passes. So yeah, I'm pretty encouraged by it. Like, he seems, 24 is a much better age. Three good youth academies behind him. Like, he looks like the sort of guy who just needs to play the team that has the ball all the time and does all the attacking, which he'll definitely get at Celtic. And I wonder if by signing him now, this might be the bit in which we look past Abada, because he'll be, he's on a good contract. So I reckon he won't be long for this world come the end of the year, and we'll get whatever money we spend now. If Kuhn plays relatively well to the end of the year, then you've already got your Abada replacement and you can sell him and, thanks for coming, Leo.
Yeah. Just on the point there about the Di Maria thing, so it was, I've just got up here, it was a tweet from StatsBomb who said the most similar under 25 player to Angel Di Maria in 2023-24 season is Nicolas Kuhn. So that potentially gives you a good view of the style of player he is. Cole Palmer was another close match, it says here, but yeah.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because they're players who are, to me, I think Di Maria particularly in his pomp, but like Cole Palmer more this year, the guys who sort of start on the edge and then move in.
Yeah.
So I think that's the sort of player, if you look at what Palmer is, that's Palmer all day long. So it's interesting that he's basically gone for a guy like that, but on the other side, in terms of the sort of the profile of it. Whereas I know we've spoke a fair bit about having one who goes and one who stays in terms of the wingers. Having Palmer come off the left and then you've got Abada or Maida at the back post. This seems to be a pretty good combination, but it looks like he's going for two of that guy, which I know probably would help Kyogo in terms of getting twice as much service to him. For a fan base who've complained a lot about Kyogo not touching the ball enough, I suspect that won't be as big a problem if you have this guy and Palmer at the same time.
Yeah. The only drawback I think potentially has is just going through his Instagram, as you do when you're linked.
This is the real scouting report now.
Yeah,
has he liked any Olden Holmes style controversial material?
There's nothing of that I've seen so far, but some of his tweets and the captions on them remind me a bit of Sead Haksabanovic, dare I say it. One of them was...
He's got a grill.
Aye. He doesn't have a grill, but it says...
Yet.
When he comes to Glasgow.
Wait, he gets that Celtic contract.
One of his captions in his post says, "This comeback was personal. I owed it to myself." If that is not a Sead Haksabanovic style Instagram post, then I don't know what is. But that does social media can paint people out to be different than what they actually are. So you never know. That was just one thing I picked up on. But other than that, he looks a really talented player and quality and someone who can come in and contribute the second half of the season, I think.
I got some extra stats, Michal, on top of what you were saying there. So I've not got expected assists, right? But I've got attempted assists. So far, there's 19 of them. So that's a ball played in that results in a shot that gathers some XG. So 19 attempted assists.
So 19 attempted and five actual ones suggests that maybe it isn't his fault.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. 43 contests won, which is like attacking dribbles, getting into the box, or maybe even like a 50-50 in the air kind of thing, but it's an attacking thing in the box. And big chances created kind of splinters off the attempted assist and gives you an idea of of those 19 attempted assists. 9 of them were designated a big chance created. So a sitter that somebody should be tapping in. So yeah, he's definitely got a bit of minerals. And the thing with the Austrian League, one thing that I know from, the kind of stuff I get up to in my spare time is the Austrian League, the Belgian League, maybe one or two others are really well, they're basically like scout leagues. And I think I was saying to you, Josh, when we announced the link with Admira Wacker, that if you actually watched Austrian football, your pal will tell you this, it does look, for the most part, like high end, like, I'm kind of saying this because my own background kind of it gives me a predisposition to this, but it's almost like high-end university football, if you know what I mean, where it's like really good high-level technical football in a lot of these leagues, but there's not necessarily the blood and snorters that you get in Scotland or even in the Championship of England or whatever, where, there's cards flying and there's some meaty challenges. These leagues are normally really good for those guys that have talent to get an opportunity. If they can start, it's a good place for them to generally showcase what they're about. And I got really excited with the Nicolas Kuhn link when it came out, because again, of something you've referenced, Michal, if I just pull up his little profile page here for a second, he's obviously at Rapid Vienna at the moment, but his career to this point was 2016 to 18 in the RB Leipzig Academy, which is one of the RB Leipzig, as you guys know, and Salzburg, they scour the earth for players, so getting into their academy is, no mean feat, it must be said. Moving from Leipzig's academy to then Ajax's academy for a couple of million euros for a few years, and then moving to the Bayern Munich academy for a couple of million euros again, between what we're talking about here, 2018 and 2021. He's definitely a guy that's showing lots of promise, lots of pedigree. And as we know with these big factory clubs, Ajax and Bayern, they just don't have enough space to give guys minutes. So you have to be the 1% to even get on the bench or whatever, you know. So not breaking through into these clubs doesn't really, I don't think it really is a blemish on him. I think more the fact that not just one, not just two, but three elite, like category A youth academies have spent money to buy this guy already. And, you know, he's obviously not good enough for Bayern or maybe even Ajax 2 or 3 years ago, which is fine. But as you can see now at Rapid Vienna, 36 starts, 5 goals, 6 assists. He is starting to get his career on track. And that kind of little timeline thing, minus the whole European escapades around it all, gives me a little bit of the Rio Hatates, a guy that's 23, 24, is finally getting the peak of their powers, finally getting minutes on the pitch and been able to dominate the game at a higher level, because playing for Rapid Vienna is a much higher level than playing for Bayern 2 and Ajax, Jong, and you know, whatever. So I think it's a project guy, but it's a great profile of a player. It's not, you know, with all due respect to the Palmas and the Yangs and a few other people we've been picking up, there's not been much on paper to support why we're buying these guys. Their statistics, their pedigree, whatever. Whereas when you look at this guy, there's statistics, there's pedigree, and you can see where he would probably fit in the team. So as much as this might not be a guy that is the quality power addition that maybe Rodgers has been sizing up, this does feel like a rather ambitious sign, doesn't it?
He really passes the number of games test as well. Like, just, I know this is something that I bang on about all the time, but like, he's played, if you look at those lists, right, playing for Young Ajax, Bayern 2, Erzgebirge Aue, and then Rapid, like, they're all playing against men proper football. Like, they're not. It's not like if he'd have done that for us, he'd been playing against, you know, civil service strollers. So like, this is a guy who's been playing proper football. Even you know, if people aren't aware, like when you play for Bayern's second team, or you play for Ajax's youth team, you're playing in the regular divisions at like a decent level. So he's basically gone. If you look from Bayern 2 to Erzgebirge Aue to Rapid Wien, he's gone 3-2-1 in terms of 3-1.5 in terms of going to the third Bundesliga, Zweite Bundesliga, and then the Austrian Bundesliga is sort of above the second German, but below the first German. And I understand your point. Like, I watched a lot of Zweite Bundesliga in Germany, and that's like probably the most tactically interesting league in the world in terms of like the level of weirdness that goes on in it. And it's very unlike the Scottish League, or like, it's all about tactics and stuff like that. It's not about kicking lumps out of each other. And having played football in Germany, I was like Scott Brown compared to just the average German footballer, and that's not me in UK football. So like, it's just like that in general. So yeah, I would expect a real high technical level, like a real high, especially pressing level. Like, off the ball will be perfect, tactically will be perfect, and then we can see like he's got skill. I think my comparison was actually more like a Paddy Roberts type of player who had all of that technical ability and all of the sort of, I don't know if you call it, it's not breeding, is it? But, you know, like, he's gone through all of the systems and just needed to be unleashed on something. And when he came to Celtic, suddenly got the ball twice as often as he did playing in the Championship, and looked brilliant. And I wonder if that'll be a similar thing with Nicolas Kuhn, because even playing for Rapid, like, they don't have 70% of the ball like he would have if he played for Celtic. So I would be interested to see as well with not to read too much into people's Instagrams, but like, someone who's been through those systems is probably quite big time. And sometimes players who come to us, like, that's what kicks them on. They like being the center of attention. In a way, I think of Jota, like, he wouldn't have, like, playing for Valladolid, like, who gives a shit? Comes to Celtic and he's like the main man at a big club, and suddenly that feeds his personality. So I wonder if that'll be the case. You never know that. Sometimes the opposite happens and they really fade away given the limelight. But looking at the clubs he's been at, like, that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, and I know from my mate who's a Rapid fan, and like watching a bit of them, like, the pressure on Rapid to win every week is massive. Like, maybe not the same level as us, but it's like, you know, what me and Josh were talking about last week with Nawrocki, like, coming over from Lecce, like, that's something that someone who plays for Lecce faces every week. And I feel like Rapid's not a million miles away from that either, in terms of, like, they're the biggest club in the country, fan base wise, like, massive expectations, all this sort of stuff won't be a problem, I think, in that respect, coming to Celtic.
Austria's green and white there.
Yeah, so, we used to get abuse in our supporters club for having a Rapid fan, and people were like, "What? You can't even talk to them." But he liked the colours, you know. What can I say? And he's great for, you know, recommending once every 6 years when we sign somebody from Rapid.
Well, let's hope he does a lot better than the old Bolingoli. In that sense, I shudder to say his name, but I think this is a good one. I'm hopeful with point of recording. We're not in the weekend yet. I'm hoping once we get to Monday, maybe we see him in Parkhead, maybe Tuesday. I'd like to think there's quick movement on this deal. The Austrian league goes into a 2-month winter break, which started at the end of November, beginning of December or something like that. So, I don't know what they're up to now, but they're not playing football and they won't be in for another couple of weeks. So this should be a deal that if Celtic want to get it done today, there's really nothing stopping them, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just on the comparisons there, Michael, you were talking about the kind of Instagram stuff, like players potentially getting too big-headed. That can work both ways. Like, obviously, you've said it can work well. They think they're really good and they're loving the centre of attention and they're doing well and they continue to do well, but they can get too ahead of themselves, maybe, and too big-headed and think they're potentially bigger than they are. But listen, we'll only know this when we see the boy at Parkhead and we see what he has to say for himself in his first press conference if he signs. So, yeah.
I'm hoping for that kind of Moritz Jens, Giacomakis kind of swagger. Those guys loved playing for us, if you know what I mean. Like, they were just like, we're Celtic players, and they've done it on the pitch as well. So, definitely something I maybe need to be a bit cautious of, Josh. But hopefully, if they get the right kind of people, like Mihal says, maybe you get 5% more out of them playing for Celtic than you do for Vienna, because it's, And
Rogers, you're just going to keep banging the Jens train, aren't you? Bring him back, I say. Bring him back.
And Rogers,
Scales and Jens at centre back. Get rid of Gareth Vickers, you know.
And Rogers loves an inverted winger like Scott Sinclair, Luis Palma. You mentioned Paddy Roberts earlier, and certainly Nicolas Kuhn coming in off his left foot, off the right hand side. So, certainly fits the mould of a Brendan Rodgers type player.
See, when you said Paddy Roberts earlier, Michal, I only realised that's because of Josh now. I thought you said Paddy McCourt, and I was thinking, what production line was Paddy McCourt on? You know,
the greatest production line in the world.
Paddy Roberts, of course.
Do you want? I am Paddy McCourt's #1 fan, right? Because I used to have this. Is
take that from my uncle.
I had a McCourt 14 Rochdale shirt when he played for Rochdale when he was 17, and I used to watch him play as a 17-year-old. I played snooker with him in O'Reilly's in Rochdale once. He used to get the ball on the halfway line, beat like 6 players, and end up on the halfway line on the other side of the pitch. And everyone in the stadium would be just going wild, and you're like, God, imagine if that kid could run forwards, he would be real good. My dad loved him. He used to go and watch Rochdale all the time, and he'd be like, "Who is this guy? Where has he come from? And why can't anyone get the ball off him?" He's like, but he was actually rubbish, wasn't he? But he was just so fucking good to watch.
My only recollection of Paddy McCourt is being on holiday when I was about 4 years old, in Santa Ponza, and all I remember hearing walking down the street from one of the Irish bars was, so you know the song "Don't Break My Heart, My Achy Breaky Heart."
Oh yeah.
Don't sell McCourt, Paddy McCourt. That's what I remember.
I was there the night it was launched. Was a post-season testimonial game at Norwich City. It was Adam Drury's testimonial, and that was the first time it was ever sung. And I was there. Me and my brother got the bus down from Pontefract, I think, in West Yorkshire. We met the Green Brigade bus going all the way down. That was my leaving party before I moved to Germany. So it must have been 2012, which is depressing if that's when you were 5 years old. That was 20. I think I was only 14 when he signed for Rochdale. But I think I might have got for my 14th birthday. I might have got a McCourt Rochdale tie. I wish I still had it. Like, I'd be wearing it now if I did.
Maybe a piece with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would fit, but don't sell McCourt.
Maybe not. Yeah, depends on what you're telling us with a Celtic shirt. For sure. I think the flip side to the coin here with the Nicolas Kuhn thing, I thought it was, I don't know if I'd say obvious or whatever, but it was something I was aware of, certainly at the end of the derby match, was the Leal Abada situation. Is he staying? Is he going? Has he said to the club, I'm going in January after all the stuff happened earlier, and yada yada. And as soon as I see, because we don't really need, if we still have Abada, Maeda, Palma, you were talking about this, Josh, before we come on, Yang, and then, let's say the undesirables behind them, Forrest and Mickey Johnson. Do we need another attacking winger to come into the setup urgently as the first January signing? Probably not. So that kind of takes me to, I think we've probably seen the last of Leal Abada. There's some stories doing the rounds today, and there's a few unofficial and wee bits of rumours here and there and all the rest of it. It does sound, by all accounts, that the club haven't entertained any offers. They're not seeking out to do any deals or anything like that. But the geopolitical situation in this country is unavoidable. Celtic's, Celtic fan base's, let's say, historical affiliation with the opposite side of the conflict to where he's at is undeniable, and just been there since before he came to the club. So I don't really see that changing. And if that is a bone of contention, then I think this will be probably the window we part ways with him. Josh brought up a great old account when we were talking about this earlier. They might have a bit of insight.
I don't know about that. I have no clue about that.
I'm not saying you're saying that, Josh. I'm not. But if you're on Twitter, there's an account that pretends to be or not be Neil Lennon, as you maybe or may not know. And this account, the Siamese boy, the Cat, he reckons that Celtic are going to try and push for a loan in this window rather than trying to get a permanent deal, and they'll try and get a permanent deal in the summer, sort of thing. So I'm a big believer in even some of the, excuse my language, the bullshit accounts. Some of them, you know what I mean? They do get some things right once in a while. That's why they get traction. That's why they get attention. They can't get everything wrong all the time. And it feels like too much smoke without fire for me at this point. There's too many unofficial, Abada's not happy. I'm even hearing from people in Israel that I talk to, if Abada wants to play for the national team, he has to leave Celtic. That's like a thing. So, Abada, do we see him go in this window, guys?
Firstly, I'd like to declare my allegiances to Hootsman Brian as my source of Celtic nonsense on Twitter. Just let's get that in, Josh. I don't want to interrupt. You can go.
No, that's a very fair point. I remember that account when I first downloaded Twitter. What an account that was. Anyway, I think it's a precarious situation, to say the least, that the young man's in. He's only 22 years of age, and to be in a situation where there's a lot of pressure on him, it seems, from his homeland, where he's playing for a club is outside his homeland that's almost not half the world away, but almost about a third of the world away, probably. It's quite tough for him. He's been an absolutely brilliant player for Celtic in his time at the club. There's no denying that. He's been the goals and assists he's racked up as incredible numbers, frankly, for his age. If he was to leave on loan, like Siamese boy says,
Neil Lennon
says, I wouldn't probably be for that. I'd rather if he was going to leave on a permanent basis, because it looks like once his time is done at Celtic, that's it, done. He can't really come back after what's happened. And he does have a number of years left on his deal because he just signed a new one around about September time. So Celtic could get a big fee and a big payday from this, which is positive if the money is went out and spent after it. But I don't know, it's a tough one. We've seen, there's been videos going about of Celtic shirts being burned in Israel and things like that. And like you've said, Quinny, there about he may not play for the national team again. If has pride in his country, obviously will do, because he's grown up there, played for a team in Israel, played for the national team a number of times, he will want to continue to play for that national team and provide for them and do well for them. So I don't know what his personal stance on the conflict is. I don't think anyone does that at the minute. But I do partly feel sorry for him, because it's a situation that's out with his control. He can't affect what's happening in his homeland. He can't affect what the Celtic fans' beliefs are. He can't affect what other people are thinking of him. So it is a tough one. Going by what Nir Bitton has said in the past, he's come out when Celtic fans were displaying the Palestine flags previously and said they have no clue, etc., about what is going on, and they're very ignorant, words to the effect of that. He's good pals with Liel. Bitton posted on Instagram at the weekend there that with Liel Abada in Israel, so they're good mates and potentially have the same beliefs in the situation. But it's a very tough one. Brendan, I remember Brendan saying, I was at a press conference back in, I think it was round about actually September time, just after he signed the new deal, that he went out to have a bite to eat with Liel to make sure everything was okay with him regarding the situation. And he said it was, and everything's all right. But now, obviously, things seem to have resurfaced. And like you say, Connie, there's no smoke without fire. That tends to be the case in these situations. But Time will tell. Time will tell, I'm sure. Once Nicolas Kuhn gets in the door, we might potentially see something about an Abada exit. But at the minute, as we've heard, it doesn't seem like it's something that's on the cards.
I think
To
it's
give
worth
this conversation a little bit more credibility, Steve McGowan has posted this story today as well, which doesn't have anything actually. There's no news in this.
There's nothing in that.
Yeah.
Why? You know,
it's interesting as well. Like we obviously I lived in Berlin, right? And the team that Babelsberg that I used to go and watch had a friendship with Hapoel Tel Aviv, so we used to get guys come over all the time, like left wing anti-fascist, like lovely dudes you could meet. Some of them even rejected going to the IDF, right? And speaking to them about it, like the pressure, we can't really understand like the pressure of the situation that like the average Israeli person has to be in regarding like the army, nationalism, all that sort of stuff. And like I think that's something to factor in with Abada. Like he grew up in that. He'll got every single kid his age at school will have been in the army, all this sort of stuff that everyone in Israel has to do. Like, even regardless of what you think of it, like you have to put yourself in his shoes for a minute and go like, this is how he's going to have to approach it. Like his cousins will be there, his brothers will be there, whatever. So I think on that side of it, like it might just be that it's not possible for him to play for us anymore in his own head. Like I think our fans haven't seen anything other than support for him as a player wanting to keep playing for us. Like, but
sorry to interrupt you there. See the cheer he got when he came on in the derby and injury, it was massive.
I think that was even like I thought that was even people trying to say to him like, "Don't you worry about yourself here, mate." But but yeah, and I would totally understand it if he was like, "I can't deal with this anymore." Like he's got his own personal life. It isn't football. The interesting thing, so as long as he's played for us, right? I've always thought he'd be leaving in January, and I thought this was just a hunch because the sort of player that he is, who basically only deals in goals and assists and nothing else, is the sort of player that 2 days before the end of the window, a team who's about to get relegated from the Premier League, who's rubbish, Everton, somebody like that, would come in and go, this guy, all he does is score goals. And that's, you look at the worst transfers at the end of the most overpriced transfers at the end of the window are always we haven't got anyone to score goals. And so you go, here's Van Vekhorst. Yeah. Guys, did he ever score for Man United? I'm not sure if he did. But yeah, that's what I always thought. Like somebody will go, there's this kid, he scores a load of goals, doesn't actually do anything else. And that was always the knock on him. It's like it kind of continues to be that if he's not scoring and he's not assisting, he's doing nothing. Like he doesn't particularly track back, he doesn't particularly get involved in the build-up. He mostly just loses the ball unless he puts it in the back of the net. And worst skills to have. So I always thought he'd go into January, and it would be interesting to see if we get Nicolas Kuhn in. We would definitely be. I would get his agent straight onto the bottom 10 clubs in the Premier League, saying, 10 million, 15 million, come and have this kid off us now. He don't want to play for us anyway, and we've already got his replacement. So knock yourself out. And I think that would be in terms of. I mean, it depends. You never know. We know what Abada is, and we don't know what Nicolas Kuhn can be. But in terms of a stylistic fit. Maybe it's that sort of. If you said you've got this sort of player and that sort of player, I'd much rather have the Nicolas Kuhn sort of player. But obviously, he's got to hit, as you say, Josh. Abada's hit some pretty big heights in terms of just pure returns. Like, I know he'd be happy to see him leave. Borna Barisic.
Hey,
that's very true.
The ghost of Davies past. If he leaves, he'll leave as like an elite hunt scalper. Like he'll go down with the best in terms of purely playing against them.
Yeah, Abada's been an absolute killer in front of goal, but like you say, it is output. It's good goals and assists, but those statistics do, like his goals per 90, his assists per 90, all that kind of thing, they just jump off the page. Should be an easy sell if Celtic are going to move him into the market.
He's still young. He's what is he, 22?
Yeah, 22.
I'd have said 21, but 22, yeah.
Yeah, just double check that. But yeah, like players like that, you can easily, you'd have clubs lining up for him.
Like we could sign Abada today. Like
exactly. He's
Abada played for Rapid Vienna, he'd be 18 million or something.
He's 22, turns 23 in October, so he's still very, very young. He's still an under 23 player. Like say Israel were in the Olympics, he could still go and play in their squad.
Yeah,
the football. So that tells you how young he still is, and to have the experiences that he has done, playing in Champions League for Celtic, scoring in Glasgow derbies, leaving, like coming in as Ange's really first kind of big marquee signing and excelling in that first season, scoring some crucial goals. I remember the one he bagged against Dundee United at home, the 1-0 game just before the Glasgow derby where we beat Rangers 3-0. Sorry. So yeah, massive player for Celtic despite his young age. And if they were to sell him, the money they could get could potentially break their record sale.
Fielding off from Everton, I mean, just a bottom 10 Premier League team. I'm saying you're talking 10, 15 minimum, like.
Yeah.
Because we can just sit on his contract, and let's imagine the war in Israel ends in the next month as a ceasefire, God willing, and like suddenly he's go back to playing for us like nothing happened. I mean, this happened in 2014 with like Near Biton as well. Like, so these things happen.
Yeah. One player that when he signed, we were told had huge potential and was going to grow into being a very important big player for Celtic. He scored in the Champions League, and it looks like he might be the first real exit out the window this month. I'm talking, of course, about medium-sized Gustaf Lagerbielke, who has been linked to Lecce and Genoa. Now, Genoa have also just sold our pal Ange a player, so they need a defender. They've got some money, which is cool. And Lecce, again, just another kind of bottom half Serie A team that hopefully we can get some business done with. This move is lined up to be a loan, I think. And I'll bring up Mercedes Jens again, Mihal, but this is the sort of business I think we should be getting into, where if we have a guy that doesn't work out, maybe something like this could happen with Abada as well, but loaning Lagerbielke to Genoa or Lecce for a few months, maybe there is a buy clause in there in case they're really interested or whatever. But having him play, say, 10 to 15 games at maximum at Serie A puts him in a much better shop window than playing one Scottish Cup game for us and 10 minutes off the bench towards the back end of the league. And it's a much better way to try and actually sell people that you don't want anymore. Like some of the guys we've been lumbered with for the last couple of years are just impossible to get off the books. James McCarthy, one or two others. So this has been a bit of a bum move. We spent $3 million on him in the summer, and then in the next window, we're hooking them out. But I'm kind of hopeful that this could be economic. Maybe we make a wee bit of a Gucci profit in 6 months off the back of it. It doesn't need to be much, just needs to be something. Thoughts on Lagerbielke to Italy? Good move, bad move, failure, flop? What are we thinking?
At Celtic, it's hard to label him a really good signing considering the amount of appearances he's made and what he's contributed. I must say, though, his performance in the first Glasgow derby this season at the heart of defence with Liam Scales will never be forgotten. But when you look at centre-half Celtic have, you've got Liam Scales, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Mike Nawrocki. He's behind those three currently in the pecking order. You've also got Stephen Welsh in there, who in the Glasgow derby before he was injured just passed. He very much impressed for me. So it's tough to say if he's been good or a flop, because when he has played, he's actually been all right in my opinion. I think Serie A will suit his style of play, the way he likes to play out from the back, pass the ball, and he's not the kind of quickest centre half you'll see around. So it's a move that probably suits him. And like you say, it's a very high level Serie A. It's one of the top 5 leagues in Europe for a reason. So he'd go in there, play for a side like Lecce or Bologna, like we've said, who are pretty high level. Sorry, not Bologna, Genoa, my bad, who are quite high, not high on the table, mid-table sides. It's not as if they're fighting relegation, scrapping for points at the bottom. So it'd be good to see him go there, and you never know if there is a buy option. He impresses, they want to buy him for, say, 3.5 million, 4 million, and there's profit on him. Or if there's not a buy option, he comes back and he's impressed in Serie A, gets another chance at Celtic. So it's a move that probably suits all parties, because he'll want game time undoubtedly. He's only made 8 appearances to date. So yeah, best of luck to him if he goes, and I think it's one the club will be willing to push through before the end of the window.
Did somebody say Jack Henry in terms of going on loan? And I think we made money on him in the end, did we not?
Yeah.
So
we get done. So we sent him on loan to Ostend with a buy option of like $1 million, and then they bought him and instantly sold him to Bruges for like 4 or 5 million.
Yeah, I knew he went for like 4 million, but I didn't realize. Yeah, we got Ostender did us. He's got the Ostend of that deal. I'll tell you that.
But
So here's my theory on Lagerbielke, right? I don't think he's a bad player at all. I just think I don't really understand why we signed him, other than that we just sold Carl Starfelt. But like, his best attributes are not ones that you would want in a Celtic centre half. Like, if you look at him prior to signing for us, he's got like an amazing long pass. We never play long passes. Like, he looked like Shane Duffy in a positive way, like that he was willing to put on that pass, which if you played on a counter attack would be brilliant. But Celtic are just never going to play like that. And he's, as you say, his pace isn't what it could be. But if you're defending your own box all the time, great. He's big, gets in the way, positioning seemed fine. So I wondered if he moved to a team that wasn't expected to have the ball all the time and was more willing to play on the break, probably looked brilliant. Like, he's one of these classic ones where if you looked at his profile, like his size, his age, the league he came from, all this sort of stuff, you go, that guy's brilliant. But then when you watch him play, you go, but he's not all the things he's brilliant at. Not every brilliant player is brilliant for Celtic, in the same way that lots of the players that we have would be rubbish for other teams. So I think he just doesn't fit as a profile, which kind of does beg the question of who does the scouting. But yeah, I could easily see him going to Genoa, a reverse Olivier and Cham, if you will. Someone who goes to Genoa, looks really good, and then gets a move, as opposed to, I think, by all accounts, and Cham went there, looked rubbish, and ended up at Celtic as a result. So, but yeah, I'd be really confident of him going away somewhere else and being good. And you look at the way that he's gone from was he the best young player in the Swedish league, something like that?
Yeah,
best defender.
Playing in the national team for Sweden, like, the guy can obviously play football. I just don't think what his style of football particularly suits us, whereas it certainly could suit somebody else who'd pay us 3.5 million for him. And my worry would be that in Italy's not a good market for this now, because they've just changed the rules regarding tax, which is very boring, but it makes it a lot more difficult for them to import players in the way that they have been doing. Like, Italy has become a bigger league in since this law came out, 4 or 5 years maybe. And then they've changed the rules basically as of this transfer window, so that it'll be a bit more difficult. But I can certainly see him going to. Don't ask me on the Italian tax rules, but I'm just aware that it's changed vis-a-vis football transfers. But yeah, I can see him going and being a great player for somebody else, especially on loan. And if we're in a situation where Stephen Welsh leaves in the summer, like, bring him back, give him another crack, or go and send him on somewhere else. But he's got to play. Like
we could have done with Jens.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, well, yeah. And he went straight into the Bundesliga. I watched him play for Schalke 04 all the time, and he looked great. Like, he looked like a brilliant player. I'm not sure his skill set was particularly suited for Celtic, but that was a classic example of someone who went away, played in a team that had less of the ball, did more of defending their box, and suddenly you could see why people thought he was good. Anyway.
Now he's at Wolfsburg, isn't it?
Yeah, so he's got to move. Schalke got relegated, and he ended up straight back in a better team in the Bundesliga. So keep the sell-on fees.
Definitely.
Keep the sell-on fees for sure. I do think we need to be a bit more active in this, like, creative part of the market. And that's kind of my main bugbear with Jens is, like, he loved the club. I thought he was good. And rather than giving him back on loan and then let Lorient do all that stuff that we've just described, why didn't we buy him and do all that stuff and then sell him for 7 or keep him or whatever? Another player that's kind of had a bit of a transfer saga just to keep us moving, guys. And it does feel like this one will be coming to a close in this window is Rocco Vata. I think he's in the last 6 months of his deal. I might be mistaken on that, but it feels like Bologna are basically pushing to get this deal done in the January window rather than waiting for the summer. And I think Celtic would be in for a very nominal transaction cost on this one, if anything, sadly. I've not seen too much of that. I know a lot of Celtic fans hold him in high regard and all the rest of it. Me and you, Josh, we were at some Youth Champions League football. I sadly only made 2 games out of the 3. I'm not as impressed with Rocco Vata as everyone else has been. When he made a few appearances under Ange, he looked okay. And I think he got a goal, maybe made a bit of an assist or something. But I don't really get what all the fuss has been about, other than he's a Celtic prospect kind of thing. And he's away to Bologna now. Will this come back to bite us in the bum? Is he going to go to Serie A and get a couple of goals this year and make us look like fools for not playing him over Mikey Johnson this whole time?
I think he will. I think he's going to go to Bologna and do pretty well. You look at, they've got a good history with Scottish players. Aaron Hickey, Lewis Ferguson's there now and excelling.
Yep.
So this season in the Lowland League, okay, it's 5th tier of Scottish football. With Celtic B, he's the top scorer. He's got 12 goals in 14 games at that level. Like you said, Quinny, we've seen him in a couple of the Youth League games. I don't think he registered any goal contributions in any of them, but I do recall the last one I was at was the final game, the last game of the group stage, and Celtic were 2-1 up, 2-1 up, and then 2-0 up, sorry, and final brought it back to make it 2 each going into the last 10 minutes of the game, and it's stoppage time, and Celtic get a breakaway down the near side of where the stand is, where we were sitting at the games, and they're shooting down towards the left. He's running down. He's 1-on-1 with the keeper, basically, and he's got a man spare. I think it might be Bruno Davidson, one of the other youth team players. And if he squares it, tap in, open goal, Celtic win the game, happy days. But he goes for it himself, and he eventually takes too much time to make the decision. Keeper saves it, finally go up the park and score a winner to make it 3-2. So a lot of people questioned him after that, kind of his attitude type thing, because when the final goal went in, he was still on the ground lying, disappointed at the missed opportunity, which potentially something that you don't like to see. But I do think he has talent. When he was in the first team, he done pretty well in Drange, 6 appearances last season, but Brendan, I don't think, rates him because he's not played yet and he's not really been called up despite the winger crisis we had. A lot of the hype surrounding him is probably down to who his dad is as well, if we're honest, Rudy Vata. When you have someone like that whose dad was a half-decent player for Celtic in the past, then there's obviously going to be a bit of hype. So it's a tough situation the club are in. If he obviously wants guaranteed first-team opportunities if he's going to sign a new contract, and it doesn't look like he's getting that at the minute. Still only 18 though, so here's someone who probably does. He obviously wants the games, and Bologna are probably offering him that. Let's be honest, he's going to go over there, and like we've said, Serie A is a good league, and probably going to get some minutes. If we lose him, if we lose him this window for a transfer fee, it's probably going to be absolute peanuts. Let's be honest, because his deal expires in the summer, so only 6 months left. But it'll be interesting to see how he does do if the move does eventually come to fruition. But I don't know. It's a tough situation that's kind of rambled on for this season, because we all thought when he was playing under Ange last season, he was going to potentially come in and have a breakthrough year. Well, at least I did in 23-24 if Ange was still the manager. But that's not happened, as we know, and it's not worked out for him. And he'll be one of those ones potentially we look back on, like you've said, in a couple of years where he's excelling at a big team, and we could have had him. And like you say, Quinny, played him over Mikey Johnston. I was a big advocate for playing Vata over Mikey because Mikey's had a number of opportunities in the past and he frankly didn't take them. Bring Vata in, a young, hungry player who's fighting to earn a new deal at the club, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen, and looks like it could be moving on, which is probably best for all parties to just end the saga.
I think if we let him go for now, if we let him go at the end of the year, we'd get 340. Well, it's 340 grand.
Yeah, compensation,
the compensation, the development money. So I think we would get more than that if we let him go now. In terms of it, they're not going to pay us the same money they would pay us in compensation, so we might get 500 grand or $1 million. Which at this stage is probably good money for him because he's never made us. He's made 6 appearances off the bench, never started a game, never going to start a game as far as we can see for Celtic. I think the main takeaway that I would have from it is obviously you have seen him play for the B team, which I haven't seen. I've only seen what they put on Twitter, which is my own sweat brilliant on YouTube. But it's another argument of why we should be using the loan system more aggressively, because at the moment we don't know how good he is because we've never given him an opportunity. But he could have been alone in the Championship. He could have been alone in the English League One or something like that, and been getting proper games of football in which we can say, yeah, okay, so this guy's worth another year's contract or whatever. It must be. We're now subcontracting this punt onto Bologna. Yeah, Bologna will now take the punt that we weren't willing to take. So. Will they go and put him in their Serie A team? Bologna are pretty good this year under Tiago Araujo, so I'm not sure you would get into it, but they must be selling him the dream to make him want to do it. And I wonder now, there's a real worry with this B team in terms of we produced 2 players out of it who were good enough to make the first team in Ben Doak and Rocco Vata. Both of them play on the right wing, and both of them are going to leave. Well, one's already left, one is going to leave. So it does beg the question of why don't we produce any other positions? And, why can't we find anywhere where we could put these guys in the team? Because it's I guess you've got Mitchell Frame, and that's about it, right? I couldn't even tell you. I mean, you watch it more than me. You'd be able to tell me who was the next cab off the rank in terms of going to get a chance. But like, I think if the last player to come through in terms of like Callum McGregor, for example, like went and played on Notts County for a year before he ever played for us, so we knew he could do it at least at some level. Blessed Ronnie Dyler put him on as a left winger against
Reykjavik.
Stjarnan or Reykjavik, somewhere in Iceland, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Reykjavik.
And he basically never left the team, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand. But when he came in for us, he'd already played 40 games in League One, like, or League One, League Two. But, you know, with, I think Jack Grealish was in that team, and like, you know, it's proper football. So I wonder why we aren't saying why, you know, we've got Bosun Laws at Fleetwood, and is there another one there as well? I can't remember.
Ben Summers at Dunfermline, that's what I was going to mention.
Ben Summers.
I was really impressed with Summers last year. I thought he looked like a prospect, and it's good to see he's playing all the time for Dunfermline.
Yeah.
So we are doing this a bit more aggressively. Like, I feel like Vata hopefully will be the last where we think we'd actually know how good he is, or at least you could go and watch. If you wanted to know how good Bosun Law was, you could go and watch 40 games worth of Fleetwood and get an idea of where he is in relation to that. Like,
interesting point about Bosun Law at Fleetwood. The manager at the start of the season was Scott Brown, and then he gets sacked, and then it was Lee Johnson, ex-Hibs manager, for a couple of months. Then he gets sacked, and now in charge of Fleetwood, is Charlie Adam, former Rangers, Stoke City man. So that's pretty interesting.
He missed out his Liverpool career there. I think I'd say that most people the real, but
Liverpool payday.
Blackpool legend. Really enjoyed the Harry Ramsden's on the front of Blackpool. Like a man who liked to fish something.
So just on the B team stuff, I've got an account, shameless plug here, Celtic Youth and Loan Updates. Go and check it out on Twitter. Here we go. But on the kind of stuff about the B team, they're sitting in the 5th tier of Scottish football, the Lowland League. So I'm sure we're all familiar, but for listeners who aren't, Scottish football goes Premiership, Championship, League 1, League 2, and then the 5th tier kind of splits into the Highland League and the Lowland League. And the winner of each league at the end of the season takes part in a playoff to get potentially into League 2, the 4th tier. So it's not the highest level, let's be honest, like you've said, Michal, teams like Civil Service, Strollers, etc., etc. Rangers actually pulled their B team out of the league last season, and they're just playing like friendlies and other matches against other development teams this season. And it's only Hearts B who are actually doing really well this season. I think they sit 2nd in the league compared to Celtic, who are like mid-table, sitting 9th. But I think something about this is Celtic are probably, for me, maybe this is just putting 2 and 2 together, more reluctant to put players out on loan now, the likes of Rocco Vata, like you've said, because they're getting that opportunity in the B team. But if you put them out on loan, instead of putting them in the B team, they'd be playing at a much higher level. I'm sure there would be many teams in the Scottish Championship, League 1, lining up to sign Rocco Vata on loan. But rather he's been kept in the B team along with a number of players who I think have the quality to be playing at a higher level than the Lowland League, and could be at teams like you said, Ben Summers in the Championship, who Summers is actually in a really good run of form right now. 2 goals, 1 assist in his last 3 games, just scored at Hampden the other night against Queen's Park. So yes, it's a tough situation there. I don't know if, the Lowland League themselves actually had a vote a couple of months ago or last month that they voted, all the teams in the league voted for the inclusion of B teams for the next year or 2. So it looks like they're going to be in there unless the club decide to pull the plug on it and think they're better off developing the players in a different way, which I personally think they probably are. Better just taking the B team out and putting players out on loan, giving them actual real experience at a higher level. But that's my take on it. Obviously, the Vata situation is not the greatest, and it just is what it is, and it looks like it's coming to an end. And I'm sure Celtic fans in the back of their minds probably hoping he doesn't do too well in Serie A, so that there's not a lot of flack surrounding it. But you never know. If I was to make a prediction, I think he will do quite well. Maybe come off the bench for Bologna, score a couple of goals. It'll go viral on Twitter, and Celtic fans will be sitting with their heads in their hands.
As long as you get the clicks on Celtic loans and loans and B team.
That's it. That's it, Michal. Definitely.
I was going to say, whenever Celtic and Bologna are normally in the same story over the last year or 2, it's not really necessarily always been around Rocco Vata, but maybe about another guy who's got a bit of a familiar surname, Sidney Van Hooijdonk, who has been kind of off and on linked to Celtic a few times. Obviously, I think his uncle. I think Pierre is his uncle or his agent.
No, it's his dad. It's his dad.
It's his
It's
dad.
his dad. I thought it was
Yeah.
his uncle. Okay, that's his
Yeah.
dad. There you go. There you go then. So maybe this is a wee. Maybe it's a wee. I don't know if gesture's the word, but Celtic are maybe, yeah, we'll give you Vata and then like hook us up with Sydney on a bit of a better deal or something.
Because he's out of favour at Bologna, isn't he? Sidney Van Hooijdonk. Yeah. His dad was in Glasgow for the Feyenoord game. Big Pierre, because one of the other writers for the site, Aaron, met him in one of the pubs in Glasgow. So potentially put a wee word in for us there.
Can I have a moment on? I've actually seen Sidney Van Hooijdonk play football for one, and for two, Pierre Van Hooijdonk probably my all-time favourite 11 players. As a Celtic fan who picked up Feyenoord, I met a Dutch guy. I'm sure I've told Quinny about this before. I met a Dutch guy on holiday when I was 11 or something, just when Van Hooijdonk had signed for Feyenoord, and then they won the European Cup, beat Rangers, and he scored a million free kicks because that's what he did. So I actually followed Sidney Van Hooijdonk on Instagram when he made his debut for Herenveen, maybe, or Napoli, one of those.
Yeah,
Herenveen, yeah. And he, so I've been following him all around. You know, I've been a Sidney Van Hooijdonk from day one of his professional career. Yeah, the guy can take a set piece. But I'm not sure he does a great deal else. He's very sort of, he's almost kind of poachery kind of, but he's a bigger body than. I mean, obviously his dad was fucking huge. So, but
yeah,
I'm not sure he might be in the Jordan Larson category of.
I was going to say, see what you've described. That's me and Jordan Larson. I think I've watched like every game he's played for the last 4 years or something like that.
Yeah,
love watching Jordan. Yeah. It's just like watching Henrik. It really is, honestly. Obviously not the level, but
not as good, because that is he is actually very similar to Pierre in terms of, you know, loves the set piece and stuff like that. But he's not as good as Pierre. But Pierre was brilliant. So
that'd have been a fun Celtic front three: Larson, Van Hooijdonk, and Vata. That'd have been that'd have been a bit of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It would have been a lot of fun in about sort of 1997 as well, with Rudy attempted to play up front. So
yeah. A few more bits of business that have been hanging about that I think a lot of Celtic fans will be happy to see. Ideguchi has went back to Vissel Kobe. Kind of knew that was happening for a while. Feels like Kobayashi is going to Yokohama F. Marinos to follow Harry Kewell in the Ange steps or whatever. And maybe UK kind of comes into the same conversation we've had with Lagerbielke. Maybe we get some Ideguchi profit for him in a couple of months, or like maybe he rediscovers himself, maybe he levels up a bit. And then next time we take a look at him, if we've sold some players on, maybe it's somebody, you know, we can maybe pull him back into the squad. There is expectations that the likes of Kwon, Tilio, maybe one or two others, maybe follow suit. But one thing I think I'll throw at you before we walk away from transfer business, right, is one of the biggest prospects in Japan is a guy called Ao Tanaka, who plays in Bundesliga 2 for Dusseldorf. Yeah. One of my very favourite players to watch over the last couple of years. And he has been omitted from the Japan squad in this Asia Cup because he is going to transfer. Like, that's just the thing. Japan said it. He said it. Dusseldorf have said it. He's not going to Asia Cup because he's going to transfer. Now, I'm going to walk back one step and think about all the players we have that should and could have been in the Japan squad and what ones are and are not. So we have Daisen Maeda away, scored behind closed doors in a friendly versus Jordan yesterday. We know Hitate, who's only been fit for 5 minutes, is in the squad. And normally he doesn't get in the squad because of Ao Tanaka. So we have left behind Kyogo Furuhashi at the squad. Now, there is some bullshit rumours, and I use that word very deliberately because of the source. It's not a very credible source, so we'll call them bullshit rumours. That people are sniffing about with Kyogo. Now, I'm putting 2 plus 2 together here, guys. Am I getting 5 or 4?
I potentially... Well, I've seen the tweet for the guy, Ekrem Koner, I think it is. Absolutely dog's dinner of a source. But you never know with these things. If to answer your question, Quinny, I'd probably say yeah. But that's potentially me being hopeful that it doesn't leave. But Kyogo, it wasn't... If I'm correct, he wasn't in the World Cup squad for Japan in 2022. I'm correct in saying that. So I don't think, for me, I was talking to my cousin actually just before the Asian Cup, before the squad was announced, and we were like, he was insistent that Kyogo wasn't going to get picked because he's not really been a consistent name in the Japan squads for a number of years. And I disagreed with him. I was like, you look at his goal record, look at what he can do. Hajime Moriyasu would be foolish to leave him out, but he obviously did leave him out, and we've had the kind of run-ins with your man Hajime before, talking about Celtic players. So I don't think it was much of a big surprise when he wasn't included in the squad, and yeah, I don't think there's going to be an exit for Kyogo anytime soon, if I'm honest.
You have to think as well, just obviously I don't watch the J League every week, but I have to cover the Asian Cup for work. And Japan, the way that Japan play, it really doesn't suit a Kyogo style striker. It suits Maeda in the middle. Like they essentially don't play with a striker to score goals. They play with their wingers to score goals. And Maeda just creates havoc for the other guys. So I think it doesn't really fit any tactical plan they've ever played with before. And I don't think they think he's a bad player. I just think he doesn't fit the way that they want to play. I don't understand why you wouldn't have a player like him on the bench if you're losing with 20 minutes to go. He loves a goal, but they've got obviously Ueda from Feyenoord. He's a great player as well. And the kid who we were linked to, whose surname I can't remember, but I'm going to call him the chairman because his first name is Mao, which probably isn't pronounced like that. I can't remember. Is it T? Is M? Is
Kubo?
No. He plays on the right.
Yeah,
the third striker they picked ahead of Kyogo. He still plays in Japan. We were linked with him briefly.
I think it's Mitsuta.
Yeah, Mao something. I don't know. I'll find out in a minute. But so they basically have picked 3 different types of striker to the one that Kyogo is, and I think it's a tactical thing as much as anything. Like there was that Moriyasu said before about that he didn't rate the league, but then he picks Maeda and Hatate, so who play in the same league. So I'm not sure I buy too much into that. But yeah, I don't think he's going to leave. I think he'll be, unless Ange came in for him. The only situation I could see him leaving was that if Ange wanted to sign him, and he just signed Timo Werner. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I thought it was this kid.
No, it's not him. It is. I'm going to do it. This is great podcasting. Hosoya. Mao Hosoya. He's a striker. Kashiwa Reisel.
I've not seen this link. When did we get linked to him?
Ages ago. Yeah.
Or was it?
But he was the third striker listed in the Japan team alongside this dude. Behind Ueda and Daizen Maeda. So that was all. Anyway, this is what I saw. Anyway, he's the third striker that they've picked. So I haven't seen him play. I don't know anything about him, but clearly he's a better fit than Kyogo, because I don't think by anyone's standards he's a better player than Kyogo. So I just think it's a tactical thing. And you never know with these things. Maybe there's lots of players, especially in international football, where the phrase one would use in Australia is he's a good tourist, which means does he get on with everybody? Because if you have to go and sit in a hotel for the next 5 weeks, you don't want a guy who's your third striker who's a bit of a doesn't get on with half the team. Not saying that Kyogo does, but this is a factor that might come into it. Whereas there might be somebody who's not quite as good, but fits in with everybody and does something tactically. So you're only going to bring one for the last 20 minutes anyway.
Is that why Marco Tilio was called up for Australia?
No, he was called up because they got 2 extra spots they didn't know they got. So I haven't heard anything on him coming back here, though. It's been not talked about at all in Australia. That seems to have
links up to Hibs, I think, at the moment.
Yeah,
I really hope so.
But I seen him. There's a couple of quotes that came out this morning of him, and he was like, he feels he is in the best condition he's ever been as a footballer since he's been at Celtic, and he's developed a lot since he's been at Celtic. But he said that he's not getting the minutes he wants, so potentially we'll see what happens to get those minutes, which probably hints at a January exit. But just to kind of backtrack on what we said, obviously about Kobayashi and Ideguchi. So Ideguchi last season, obviously he was at Avispa in Japan, in the J League, nominated for the Player of the Season, done really well, went there on loan. Potentially that is what we talked about earlier about Gustaf Lagerbielke going over to Serie A and impressing and hopefully getting someone to buy him, because that is what happened with Ideguchi. Obviously, Japanese version went over there, impressed, and then Vissel Kobe signed him up for, I think it was 870,000, and we bought him for 850,000. So a nice wee 20,000 profit to line the pockets there. So
I think we paid as much as that. I thought we paid like less than half a mil.
Was it? Might have been.
Yeah, we made like a slight profit on him.
Yeah, we definitely made a profit. Yeah, so that's positive. But obviously, Kobe just won the league in Japan, so it's not as if he's going to a smaller club, which is good to see from him, because he's still coming into the peak of his career, which hopefully can impress.
Yeah.
Do you want a Benji Siegrist update?
Well, I was going to say, actually, I've just realised that I've missed one thing off the transfer thing as I've tried to walk us away from it. But it did catch me by surprise that Benjamin Siegrist, for anyone that did miss it, was close to a transfer, a loan. I'm not too sure on the full details, to Sturm Graz, one of the more prominent teams in Austria, not Australia, which was also rumoured previously. But the big man said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to Sturm Graz, and he's turned it down.
Yeah, so my understanding of it was, I seen the article when it initially came out, and it was Benji Siegrist, the move fell through at the last minute because Sturm Graz opted to sign one of the Liverpool keepers, a young Czech keeper from Liverpool. I don't know his name, but they went to sign him and kind of punted Siegrist out at the last minute when they were about to sign him, because it seems as though the Swiss keeper is dying for minutes and he just wants to play football. Obviously, signing for a team in Austria is quite close to his homeland, isn't it? So that's what I read from the article. But yes, I think the club are just wanting to clear a lot of the deadwoods. Siegrist certainly falls into that category. 2-3 appearances for the club in his time here, spent a year and a half. And like I think me and Michal discussed it last week about the Australia thing. Obviously, you mentioned his missus is a big kind of celebrity type figure in Australia.
Oh, I've got updates. I've got updates. I found out she was on The Bachelor. That's why she's a radio host, but she was on The Bachelor Australia. I don't know if she was The Bachelor or if she was on it, but she was a reality TV show. But yeah, so I was very surprised to see this Sturm Graz link, not least because I thought he got confused between Austria and Australia. But his missus has very much enjoyed spending her winter in, they did Hogmanay in Edinburgh and went up to the Highlands. They brought the whole family up. So what a time it was to be Benji Siegrist. And now he's on holiday in the Maldives, but he has been training. So imagine he's being pulled out of his holiday in the Maldives with his loved up with his Australian missus to go and live in Graz, which is not, I don't know. One of my uncles lived there, but it was during the war and he was in a prisoner of war camp. So, I don't have the best reviews of it, but I'm sure it's improved since. But he's I
hope so.
That's all I know about it. I've never been there, but Graz is it's. I wouldn't say it's the most entertaining place in the world, but he is from Switzerland and it's very sort of similar. He loves the mountain air. I'm sure his new missus would love to go and ski in holidays. She's in the Highlands now. She doesn't need to go back. So she can go skiing. And I will continue to follow his exploits via his Australian connection as long as that lasts. Until the A-League needs a new goalkeeper.
I think on the podcast, we've definitely got some good routes across Instagram, whether it be for Nicolas Kuhn or Siegrist and everything else in between. Proper high-level journalism on the CeltsAreHere, which we love. Though the final note we do have on the podcast is Scott Brown's been making big comments about the derby allocations. I think it all stopped when we kept winning. I think that's why that stopped. And I think we all kind of know that anyway. Like, they just couldn't take us laughing in their faces ever so much. Now, I find the whole ticket allocation thing quite a funny problem, right? Rangers fans being at Parkhead when they get beat, us going to Ibrox when we're going to go and win. Yes, we want away fan allocations back in town. I think there's no two ways about it. But I do think equally on the opposite end of the spectrum, I don't think it needs to take away as much from the game as people are making out, because there's plenty of derbies around the world where there is only like one section of fans allowed in, because it will actually be warfare if they allow both of them in the same building during a football match. And I'm talking about Argentina, South America in particular. So I think, sometimes it's a problem if you make it a problem, really. Like, I was at a derby match last year. I forget exactly what scoreline it was, but we had a full stadium tifo. The full stadium was decked out and we absolutely smashed them on the day. It was a great atmosphere. I remember one of the first couple of derbies going to Celtic Park with no away fan allocation. And you'd not get their faces to rub it in and, whatever. But I've still had a great time. You know what I mean? It's not been that much worse. But I do think that the fans maybe just go, it's not the same. It's not the same. And then it's not the same because everyone's talking about it not being the same.
I would say a lot of that talk surrounding how it's not the same with derby allocations was kind of kick-started a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, it's been existent for a while, but when Lawrence Shanklin scored that last-minute winner for Hearts at Tynecastle, and Hearts had the full stand, for Hearts at Easter Road, sorry. Hearts had that full stand behind the goal, and you've seen the scenes there. It was absolutely brilliant scenes for Hearts fans. And a lot of Celtic, even Rangers fans, are saying that's not having that in the Glasgow derbies certainly taking something away from it, and it's something that should be brought back in. I believe Rangers last week or earlier in this week have changed the location of some of their away fans, the small groups of away fans that are going to Ibrox. I don't know if they'll be doing that with Celtic. But on the Scott Brown comments, I haven't really actually seen anyone come out and say that is of note, like someone like Scott Brown, Neil Lennon say that. He's the kind of first one that said it, and it's kind of common sense, isn't it? Why would they just stop giving us tickets coincidentally when Celtic are winning at Ibrox constantly and celebrating behind that goal? So, yeah, it's a bit common sense from Brown, and it's just speaking the minds of all Celtic fans, let's be honest here. Do I want it to return to what the old allocations were? I probably would. Maybe not the full allocation, but if Celtic gave Rangers what they gave Feyenoord in the Champions League, and if Rangers maybe gave Celtic what they've given teams like Borussia Dortmund, Brøndby in the past, then that's something that could be agreed. Because I feel like having 800 fans, you may as well just have none at that rate. I don't see the point in it. So I would hopefully the clubs can get to some sort of agreement, but at the end of the day, it's Rangers that started all the problem, and that's what Brown said, and he's right.
I mean, much as I love Scott Brown, sort of, captain, leader, haircut inspiration that he is, like, I don't know, I watched loads of Feyenoord Ajax fans, and I never thought this game would be improved by more Ajax fans being here. Like, they don't have, any game between Feyenoord, Ajax, PSV, maybe even Utrecht as well, don't have any away fans. Like, and you never miss them. Like, I don't think I've ever missed them once. Like, it's, as you say, in South America, like, doesn't happen. Pretty sure it doesn't happen in Fener, Gala, and Besiktas games in Turkey. Like, not sure I've ever missed them there either. Like, and you look at, like, for example, we think of that, like, that Shanklin goal. What did Brendan say? He's a great finisher, Shut up, Brendan. But, like, you watch that Newcastle game, the Newcastle-Sunderland game, where they had a load of Newcastle fans there, more than they ever would get. And I know Newcastle, when they host Sunderland, they put them right up on the top tier. I don't think it was, massively improved. Like, I was pretty underwhelmed by how that game was, given, they hadn't played each other in so long, and they were winning 3-0, So I think it's a bit overrated. Like, I'm very much in it, like, either give us the Broom loan or don't give us anything. Like, that seems the main thing for me is that when they gave us 800 in that weak corner, like, it clearly wasn't safe. Like, people were lobbing stuff at them in a way that, like, if where it is at Feyenoord, for example, they're up when Feyenoord played Rangers, for example, they're up above you and it's full on caged off. Like, you can't throw anything in or out. They would go in on, like, a secure train line, all that sort of stuff. Like, and that just doesn't happen, obviously, when you go Ibrox. And I just thought, like, if there's, how many were in the Broom? Like 8,000, 7,000, something like that? Like, the whole stand. Yeah. Like, it's much easier to deal with everybody in, everybody out, than when it's that tiny group of people you've got to march in. Like, that's clearly not safe. Like, and I would imagine, my sympathy for them is not high, but, like, it's also probably not safe for the 50-year-old Rangers fan who just wants to go and watch their team play at us either, because they'll get, if there's only 800 of them, it's probably an accident waiting to happen for both sides. Whereas when it was the big numbers, it was a bit easier to deal with. So, like, and I just don't think now, obviously, as I've mentioned on this podcast before, I love follow. I spend a lot more time on follow than I should do. And they've moved their allocation now for, like, Livingston, and that has moved into a different part of the stadium. But that's more to do with them there being 50 of them, rather than the way that I'm pretty sure they're actually moving whatever they're called, copy that fellow bears, them ones, they're moving them to where they're moving out of the onion bears, and they're moving them out of where they were in the front of the stand. So maybe that sort of paves the way, because the problem is that they were having to move their ultras to accommodate the away fans, which obviously everybody was like, that's not a particularly good
Yeah.
look. So I don't
I
know.
think the
They're
Bears
just
belong in
petty.
the zoo. Personally, they're talking about putting up fences and nets and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, maybe relocate them to the zoo. Maybe it'll help a wee bit.
Maybe they get them some toilet water to drink, and they'll all feel like they've won something. Anyway,
Maybe
I
that's
don't
why they
think
smashed the toilets up. Maybe they're after drinks of water. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
I've just watched all
why
the day about the Planet Earth 3, and bears will go a long way to get a drink of water. That's what I've learned.
Well, I think on that bombshell, guys, is there anything else for us to touch on this week? Josh, you're about to say
Asian
something.
Cup.
Sorry.
I was just going to say about the away fans thing. Where Celtic fans are at Ibrox, Celtic have stated it in the past that they're very unsafe, and I think everyone who is at least wearing a Celtic shirt at Ibrox is unsafe. One of our coaches was hit with a bottle in the head. There was a Buckfast bottle broken up in Joe Hart's box after he came on after half time at one of the games. But like having the Celtic fans there at Ibrox is totally unsafe, as we know. It'd be like having the Rangers fans at where the Green Brigade sit. It's like right in a corner when you've got fans either side of you who can easily just chuck stuff into you. So yeah, exactly. The situation needs to be looked at. It needs to be something needs to change if they are going to have away fans in. Like you have said, potentially it's better just with no fans and in, like particularly when Celtic are winning the derbies and it's just a whole stadium full of Celtic fans. It's such a raucous noise. It's an incredible atmosphere inside the ground. We've seen it in the 3-0 victory, the kind of first derby back after COVID at Celtic Park, that Celtic won. The atmosphere that night, I believe there were no Rangers fans in. It was electric, very hostile for the Rangers players to deal with. And I think that was the same in the derby just past there. When Celtic went 1-0 up, the atmosphere inside the ground was very tough to handle for the opposition. So we'll just have to see how the situation progresses. Like you say, maybe moving the wee bears, whatever they're called, I don't even know. I don't really care, to the opposite side of the stadium. Potentially there's something in that they're going to let Celtic fans back in. We don't know. Let's just see.
Yeah. Before we depart, I got a question for you, right? So I have to watch the Asian Cup for work because Australia are in it. And obviously I'll be watching Japan and Korea for the Celtic players. So we don't have anybody in the AFCON. So firstly, we'd be watching the Asian Cup anyway, but secondary question, given that we have no football to watch, AFCON starts as well. We don't have any players in it, although Ncham's playing and who's another one? Sadianko's playing. Hey. There's some real
happy days.
There's some Celtic legends going to be turning out in the AFCON. Also, Fashion Sakala's playing, which I only know because there's another player on the Zambia team whose name's Toaster. Toaster. Maybe it's a name in Zambia, but I can't remember what his surname is, but his first name's Toaster, which is brilliant. I hope he burns the opposition. Hey. There we go. But so I will watch these. I'll watch the Asian Cup for work. I watch the AFCON because I've worked AFCONs before, and it's a great tournament to watch. I love it. Is this something that other people are interested in, or am I just a nerd?
Quinny, you can go ahead. You go ahead first.
Yeah. I'll probably catch wee bits of the Asia Cup. That's probably because I'm a wee bit of a deep end football person. And I don't normally watch the African Cup of Nations, but I might be tempted depending on when kickoff times are. So I just feel generally that there's a huge push in world football now across like a lot of these other regions getting their own identity and strengthening up their own tournaments and stuff like that. So maybe AFCON, maybe I catch it this time. I wasn't planning on it. And yeah, that's me. Maybe AFCON, probably a bit of Asia Cup.
I think it's the same time zone as the UK because it's an Ivory Coast, which is or Cote d'Ivoire, which is
Africa.
I'm pretty sure it's almost exactly the same time zone as the UK.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
For the AFCON, I think it's, at least in the UK, it's easier to watch the AFCON than the Asian Cup because Sky Sports have got the rights for all the AFCON games.
Oh, cool.
So I think they'll be showing them all. So it's probably easier to watch AFCON than trying to find a dodgy stream in your Fire Stick for the Asian Cup. To answer your question, if I can catch bits of it, then I probably will. If it's of interest and I'm sitting in the house doing nothing, I'll just stick a game on because there's nothing on anyway. So yeah, I'll see. Depends on how university works out. If I'm in uni and I'm sitting up the back of a lecture and I'm bored, I'll stick on a wee Asian Cup game on my phone, sit and watch it up the back. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Go ahead.
If streaming had been a thing when I was a university student in 2007, I cannot tell you how much African football I would have watched. I would have done nothing. I don't know. If you could have streamed football in 2007, I don't know about you, Connie, but like I would have been doing even less work than I was doing. I wasn't doing much.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't have ever actually did real work. I'd probably just trying to do all this stuff much quicker, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
that's fair. I think it'll be interesting to see how the boys do, but just on that, I remember watching the World Cup, obviously the one just passed in school. That was getting to watch that in school was unbelievable. I remember it was the England game. We're going on a bit of a sidetrack here, but England, their first game in the tournament it was in my school. I went to Lourdes, just down the road from Ibrox actually, but it's a Catholic school full of Celtic fans who obviously very much dislike England. Miho, no offence, mate, but England were playing the first game of the tournament. Can't remember who it was against, but the whole Iran, whole cafeteria back in Iran. Don't know how good that is for a political point of view, but the whole school's back in Iran. England games on the TV, and the silence when England scored the first goal was very funny. But the Asian Cup should be a good one. I'm not gonna. I think you're probably best placed than us, Miho, over who's likely to win it. I don't know if Japan, South Korea could go all the way.
Japan, yeah. So the last one was actually won by Qatar, who were then rubbish in the World Cup. Yeah, it's obviously in Qatar again. I think the last one was in Dubai. Maybe it was UAE last time. But anyway, I think Japan and Korea. It's always Japan and Korea. Iran will be all right. Australia are rubbish. Australia, if they can get to the last stages, they'll be all right because they play like Hibs. Like Hibs with marginally better players. Yeah. But like they don't really have any superstars, to be honest. But it'll be good for me, like in terms of Australians have a weird relationship with soccer where they don't really care, but they tend to get behind the national team. But they've scheduled it quite well, so all the games start at 10:30 our time, which for Australian soccer is actually like watchable. They actually, for the World Cup, we had games that started at 12 in Qatar, which meant they were 9 p.m. here, which was brilliant. 9 p.m. on a Saturday night. But yeah, once you get to a night game in Qatar, then it started at 4 or 3 a.m. here. So I guess I think they've got as well, the group is like they play India on the first game. They've done the thing where they've expanded it to 24, which in the Euros has kind of made it more interesting, but in Asia Cup means you've got a lot of crap to get through. Like if they play India, it could be like 8-0, like, and that's if they were half good, it'd be 8-0, but they're much better defending and attacking, so it'll probably be 2-0 and really boring. Do you know, I watched that England game on a flight, which I didn't even realize while I'm getting on the flight that you could watch TV on it. Yeah. And suddenly it was like I was flying back from England to Australia, so I watched the first game Qatar in a pub in Manchester, and then it was amazing. Imagine to think I watched the 2002 World Cup in school when Ireland beat gone to Catholic school in England with more Irish people than English people. When Ireland beat Saudi Arabia 3-0, it was like the entire school was going wild. Yeah. But that was had to get roll the old TV into the like assembly hall. Yeah. I reckon, Quinny, this had been your era as well, because all those games were what 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, something like that. But
I remember the 2002 World Cup in school, like Japan and Korea. Like I think every day we watched the game, and it was like morning, lunchtime. There was always a game on to watch. They would roll from Germany, Japan, or whatever it was, and it was
Germany Islands, mate. We drew 1-1 with them. I watched that game, so that must have been I was on holiday in Ireland when it happened, and at the time, less so now, but I was where my family live in Ireland. We would have been the only Catholics on the whole street, and so of course, when Germany scored, the whole street loved it, and then when Ireland scored. With what Robbie Keane scored, 93rd minute, something like that, and then it was not well received on a street in just outside Coleraine. So shout out to anybody who knows where Port Stewart is. Not quite the Orange Riviera, the Port Rush, but it's a bit nicer than that. But yeah, to think that you've gone from watching it on one TV for 400 kids to being able to watch it on a plane is pretty impressive. So
or your phone, that is mad.
Or your phone, yeah,
mental
for sure. Well, if you've got to this part of the podcast, well done to you, and we hope you enjoy your weekend. We've had a great time going over the latest comings and goings, mainly some goings, maybe some inbounds. We'll see how it all shakes out over the next couple of days. And yeah, have a good weekend. Enjoy yourself, Josh. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Hail, hail.
Been great. Thank you very much for having us on again.
And Miho, always a pleasure, never a chore. Hail, buddy.
Well, do you know what? I'm just looking at this camera now. As I say, it's like 100 degrees. It's like 100 humidity here, right? And I'm now looking at myself in the camera going, it looks like a sort of 70s porn movie in soft focus because there's so much. I'm cleaning the camera. There's so much humidity. I need to go and sleep in a room with a fan. It is. You cannot believe how hot it is. I'm sure that makes you feel better in the middle of the Scottish winter.
Very true.
That's it. Oh, hail,
You can
everyone.
imagine you're in Qatar and Cote d'Ivoire. Hail, hail.